What if I told you Africa and China's relationship didn't begin with today's shiny railways, or billion-dollar loans, or even those towering mega-projects we see today? No. It began with mysterious voyages across the ocean, with priceless gifts carried thousands of miles, with hidden power struggles. That started more than 6 centuries ago. This isn't just a modern story of trade deals or construction sites. No. It's a tale of emperors and kings, of secret negotiations, of silent rivalries that still shape Africa's destiny, even today. From Ming Dynasty emperors, ruling in palaces of jade, to African rulers, whose gold could shake the world. From Cold War revolutions to 21st century debt traps. This is the untold history of Africa and China, a story of partnership and betrayal, of hope and warning, and a story where history doesn't just repeat, it haunts. Our story begins in the 15th century, when the world's oceans were alive with mystery and power. Zheng He, the great Chinese admiral, commanded treasure fleets so vast, they dwarfed anything Europe had ever seen. Massive ships, some the size of modern football fields, carrying silk, porcelain, and gunpowder, a floating empire, sailing into the unknown. And then, they reached the ports of East Africa, bustling marketplaces in places like Mogadishu, Malindi, and Kilwa. There, African merchants displayed ivory carved like jewels, gold mined from deep within their lands, and spices that carried the scent of wealth across oceans. For the first time, two worlds, separated by thousands of miles, stood face to face. Chinese records tell us something extraordinary. An African ruler gifted the Emperor of China a giraffe. In Beijing, the animal was paraded before astonished crowds, hailed as a heavenly beast, a symbol of divine blessing. But behind the spectacle, a question lingers. Was this a moment of mutual respect, a partnership of equals? Or was it the first sign of an exchange tilted in one direction, foreshadowing patterns we still see today? Diplomacy in the 15th century was never just about gifts. It was about influence. The Ming Dynasty viewed Africa as both exotic and strategic. Every exchange, ivory for silk, gold for porcelain, carried more than wealth. It carried prestige and power. Across the Swahili coast, from Mombasa to Zanzibar, rulers sought to align themselves with the great power across the sea. Alliances with China meant legitimacy, recognition, a chance to stand taller among rival kingdoms. African rulers welcomed Chinese envoys into their courts, hoping that friendship with the dragon would strengthen their crown. But empires rise, and empires turn inward. As centuries passed, the Ming Dynasty closed its doors. The treasure fleets vanished. China's gaze shifted away from the oceans, away from Africa, and Africa left exposed. The silence was quickly filled by others. European ships soon arrived on the same shores, but they did not come for trade alone. They came for conquest. The old connection between Africa and China faded into silence, and in that silence, a new chapter of foreign domination began. For centuries, the echoes of Africa-China trade went silent. No ships, no envoys, no alliances, until the 20th century, when the world itself was on fire. Revolutions spread across Africa. Colonial empires crumbled, and the Cold War turned every continent into a chessboard. Beijing saw an opening. This was not the age of silk and porcelain. This was the age of weapons, training, and ideology. China armed African liberation movements. Guerrilla fighters carried rifles stamped with Chinese steel. In return, newly independent nations turned to Beijing, offering something even more valuable than gold: recognition, a seat for China in the world over its rival, Taipei. But diplomacy needed more than promises. It needed concrete proof. In the 1970s, the Tanzania-Zambia Railway was born, built with Chinese funds. laid down with Chinese labor, a steel artery running nearly 2,000 kilometers across Africa. It became a symbol of brotherhood, proof that Africa could build without Europe's hand. But hidden in the iron tracks was a warning. A new kind of dependence was already taking shape. China had returned to Africa, not as a distant memory from the Age of Empires, but as a player in the Cold War, ready to shape the continent's future, one alliance at a time. Fast forward to today, China is no longer a distant ally. It is Africa's largest trading partner. Billions of dollars flow into roads, ports, and railways. Skylines rise, highways stretch, bridges connect cities once cut off. But with every loan, with every ribbon-cutting ceremony, questions grow louder. Is this true development, or something far more dangerous? Debt diplomacy? Supporters say China is delivering what the West never did. Real infrastructure, steel, concrete, and progress you can see. They argue Africa is finally being built, not exploited. But critics whisper another story. They call it a new empire without soldiers, a quiet empire written in contracts, interest rates, and debt that may never be repaid. The dance between Africa and China is not only about money, it is about resources. From oil fields in Angola to cobalt mines in the Congo, rivers of wealth flow eastward. But what flows back in return? Jobs for Africans, technology for the future, or just more debt, polished with promises that fade with time? The new Silk Road is here. But for Africa, the question remains, is it a road to prosperity or a path paved with chains? History whispers warnings if we listen closely. Centuries ago, Africa gave raw wealth, ivory, gold, and even a giraffe that stunned the Ming court. In return, China offered silk, porcelain, and power. Today, the pattern feels hauntingly familiar. Once again, Africa provides the raw materials. Once again, China brings the goods, the loans, the influence. The names have changed. The ships have become cargo planes. The palaces of jade have become glass skyscrapers. But the exchange remains strikingly similar. Back then, it was gifts and tribute. Now, it is cobalt, copper, and mega projects. The past and present are mirrors, and the reflection is hard to ignore. So the question remains, is Africa standing as an equal partner, or playing the role of a pawn in a much larger game? History suggests the answer is complicated, and perhaps unsettling. From treasure fleets to trillion-dollar deals, the story of Africa and China is not just about trade. It is a story of opportunity and of caution. A story where the choices of today echo the mistakes of the past. Will Africa seize its destiny, or will history repeat once more? If this journey opened your eyes, you've only seen the beginning. Our next deep dive uncovers Egyptian gods and goddesses, powers that shaped the continent long before colonialism. Don't miss it. Subscribe now and join us, because history doesn't just teach, it warns.